Good morning, everybody. Good morning and peace be with you. Welcome to Tea Talk Tuesday. It is a chilly one here in Buffalo, New York. So wherever you're tuning in from, go ahead and say good morning, drop that in the comments. And we welcome you to faithinreallife.com. This is a ministry that is put out by them. There are plenty of resources on the Faith in Real Life page. So we encourage you to head on over there and invite some people to take the journey with you. So cheers. Good morning. Good morning, Carrie and Libby and Greg. Peace be with you guys. Today, I want to talk to you about, good morning, Anne, about saying good morning to Anne. I want to talk to you about your fish story. I just love to fish. I don't know if any of you love to fish. Let me know if you do. I love to fish. I used to fish all the time. It's something I haven't done really all that much in years. I used to love to go out on Lake Erie, especially with my dad. And the rougher the water, the higher the waves, the better, which doesn't always make for great fishing. Used to make my brother sick. But I had a reputation for always catching the biggest fish, or at least, if not the biggest, the most interesting fish. Good morning, Tina. I love to cast the line, it was so much so that it was very annoying to my brother. So I don't think he enjoyed fishing with me very much. And eventually my husband took that role of me always catching the bigger fish or the better fish. There was one time my husband and I were fishing and I caught this fish and none of us had ever seen it before. It was like this. I'm like, I discovered a new species of fish that no one had ever seen, at least not my inner circle. And so, Troy's like, of course you caught this fish that nobody knows what it is. So, and I don't know that we ever found out. That was before cell phones where you could take a picture and post it and you'd get 100 million answers by, lunch. So good morning, Carrie. Carrie, you've never been fishing? Girl, you live on Lake Erie practically. We got to do something about that. And Dottie, good morning. It's so good to be with you guys. So, yep, I'm going to take a sip of my tea in my quite bright mug here. I think I've told you about this one in the past. I made this at a pottery place we used to always go, my mom and I and the kids when they were younger. And it was just something really special that we did. But I put a fill, oh, you can't see it. No, you still can't see it. I put a fill line, oh, there it is, in there so that when someone was getting me tea, they would know right where to put it so they wouldn't, get spilled. And at the bottom, it says, more, please. So it didn't really work. I didn't really get anyone to bring me tea, but there you go. So if you're just joining us, welcome to Tea Talk Tuesday. If you want to drink coffee, you have to show up on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. On Tuesdays, we're drinking tea. So we're talking about fish stories. All right. You know how they are. When you say, people ask, how was your fishing? And you're like, it was great. I caught this fish that was this big when really it was this big. Or you talk about the harrowing experience you had, or the waves crashing over the boat and almost sinking you when really it was just a little spray, got your hair wet. But I did really love to fish, and so much so that when Troy and I were newlyweds, we moved up north and we were in Messina, which was right on the St. Lawrence Seaway, if you know where that is. And I was so excited to be living like right there on the Seaway. And I couldn't wait to go fishing. So we were newlyweds living in this apartment, right? I promptly went out and bought a blow up boat because we were living in an apartment and we couldn't afford a boat. We were newlyweds. So I bought a blow up boat, and I don't know how I convinced my husband, probably because he wanted to make his new bride happy, but I convinced him to blow up this boat and drop it in the St. Lawrence. Mm-hmm. I was sure this was going to be an epic adventure, and I was going to catch these incredible seaway fish, right? That would just maybe come in, I don't know what I thought they would be better, but there we were, launching this boat, and this epic adventure turned into a very harrowing experience. because this blow up boat that we were in was really no match for the ocean liners that were going up the seaway. You know, the current was like strong. At one point, even I was a little concerned. And I mean, I would have been like, let it take us wherever it wants to take us. Let's have an adventure, you know. Good morning, Linda. Peace be with everybody. Oh, Tina's here. Did I say good morning? So we're out on the seaway, and it became very obvious to me very quickly that we were not going to be fishing. We were just trying to fight the current with our paddles. Yeah. So eventually we made our way out of the channel, like into the little like bay area where it was calmer and the current wasn't quite so severe. And at that point, the only thing Troy was interested in was getting to the shore. I'm like, but we haven't even been fishing yet. And he's like, woman, there's no fishing in this body of water. I'm like, all right. So at one point, we got to this area where the weeds were so thick that we couldn't paddle through it. Troy had to get out of the boat, get into the seaweed, and like swim us back with the rope in his mouth, swim us back to shore. I kid you not. Like, honest to God, not even a fish story. This totally happened. And we got to shore and we pulled the boat out. We deflated it. And he turned to me, his new bride, and he said, two things. He said, first of all, get rid of the boat. And second, never speak of this again. Now, the reason I'm on here telling you all about this story, even though I was requested not to speak of it again, is because, of course, you know, people saw us. Right. So Troy, brand new trooper, he goes to work the next day, and needless to say, he has not heard the end of it his entire career up in Messina. And then it followed him back to Buffalo. People talked about him like, who in their right mind would launch a blow-up boat in the St. Lawrence Seaway? But his wife wanted to fish, and he loves his wife, and she wanted to be out. I'm not much of a shore fisher. I prefer to be out on the water, which is probably why I haven't done a lot of fishing in the last many years, because I don't own a boat. You think I would, but I don't. So that is this fish story that I wanted to tell you. Why am I telling you fish stories? I used to think that would be a great name for a band. One of the bands that I was in, I tried to convince them to change our name to Fish Story. And they were like, why? Why would we do that? And, you know, why would we want to tell an exaggerated story? And I was like, that's not what it is. To me, yeah, Troy is a saint, Greg. You're absolutely right. To me, the fish story is your encounter with Jesus. You know, people think of fish stories as being untrue or exaggerated because they're stories of these heroic adventures or miraculous things that happened or things that were bigger and more greater than you could even imagine. And, you know, that's exactly what I think having an encounter with Jesus is supposed to be, or is not supposed to be, is. When I think about living in the sacraments, I think, you know, the sacraments are supposed to be those encounters, and they are supposed to change us, and they are miraculous, right? The sacraments are miraculous. So this fish story of ours, this encounter or continual encounters with Jesus, I mean, they should be pretty incredible stories to tell. And you know how it is when someone just comes back from fishing. They want to tell everybody about this big fish that they got. I went fishing again in a river, but we hired some people to take us this time in a boat with an engine, my husband and my father-in-law, a few years back, and it was freezing. I think I took everybody's coats, all the gentlemen on the boat. I'm just like, hey, are you wearing that? Can I just put that one over this one? It was so cold, but it was beautiful. And my father-in-law and I caught these big, beautiful fish. I was a little irritated that his was a smidge bigger than mine, but these big salmon, I mean, like for real, this big, maybe even this big. I should have brought a picture because you're going to think I'm telling you stories. But it was so much fun, and I absolutely loved it. And then we had to tell everybody about it. We're still talking about that fishing trip. We're still talking about that fish that my father-in-law caught instead of my fish, but that's okay. I'm a bigger person now. But let's talk about these disciples, right? In our readings on Sunday, we learned how, we heard the story that we know, most of us, about Jesus going to the shore and seeing the fishermen and having them cast their nets, and the miraculous thing, just imagine the story these guys would have told if it ended there. They would be running and telling everybody they knew, yeah, this guy shows up and he tells us to cast our nets on the other side of the boat. And then we had so many fish that the boat almost capsized, and it took everybody, people from shore had to come and help us get this net inside and full of fish. And there were so many fish, and people are like, yeah, right, that many fish, your nets would have torn. And people are like, no, the net didn't tear. That's the thing. And people are like, yeah, sure. Your boat almost capsized. What a fish story that is, right? But then it goes on and it talks about how they were being told to leave their nets and to go follow this guy. Just imagine so Zebedee was there, right? So he sees this whole thing. So he has a better grasp. But imagine going home and telling your wife, yeah, so I was fishing with the kids, and this guy came along, and we hadn't caught anything, and the boys were really grumpy and discouraged and complaining like kids do when it's not very exciting, and this happened, and this net and the fish and blah blah blah. Well, this guy told our boys to come and follow him, so that's what they're doing. Now, as a mother, I would be like, I'm sorry, what? And the kids would come home and they'd be like, Mom, this guy, he was amazing. So we quit our jobs, and we're just leaving the boat and the nets there, and we're leaving. Now, Mom, if she's anything like me, would say, honey, where are you going to stay? What are you going to eat? Right? Mamas want to know these things. What are you going to eat? I mean, how long are you going to be gone? Who is this guy? Can I call his parents and make sure he's legit? Right? How many of you have ever done that as a parent? You're like, need some more information. Okay. Nope, not these boys. They just leave it all behind and they go follow Jesus. Because that is what happens when you have an encounter with Jesus. When you have that incredible, miraculous, heroic, what are some of the other words we could use to describe an encounter with Jesus? If you have some, put them in the comments. How do you describe an encounter with Jesus? Right? So if you have just joined us, we are talking about our fish stories, what it means to have an encounter with Jesus. And this is Tea Talk Tuesday, which is ministry out of faithandreallife.com. So the web address is there in the comments. Libby says, life-changing. Your experience with Jesus is life-changing. Absolutely. Right? I mean, think about Mary, Jesus' mother, right? The fish story she must have told Joseph. She's like, Joseph, you're not going to believe what happened. This giant angel came and stood before me, and it was so bright, and he told me not to be afraid. And then he said that I was going to be filled with joy, and I really was. It was amazing. I should have been petrified, but I was filled with joy. And then he told me that I am going to have a baby, and that God is going to be the father of my baby. Isn't that amazing? Joseph would have been like, what? I'm sorry. I don't comprehend that. My fiance is pregnant and God is the father. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it was an incredible story. It was a miraculous story. It was a life-changing story. And Joseph probably didn't really buy into it. I'm sure he was thinking 100 other things until he had his own encounter. And then everything changed. Having your own encounter with Jesus is so important for every single one of us. Not to just hear the stories of other people's faith, of other people's encounters, but to recognize, to seek after. Sometimes we have these Jesus encounters and we don't even recognize it as Jesus because we are I don't know, we have our blinders on maybe, or we are too focused on something else. Or we want our fish story to be the same as somebody else's fish story. And when it isn't, we don't recognize Jesus when he brings us our own fish story. I mean, think about Mary that ran to the tomb, right? So Mary's there and she sees the empty tomb and Jesus isn't there and she knows that he's risen. And so she runs back and she goes to the disciples and she tells them, "You're not going to believe this, but I was there and Jesus is alive and the tomb is empty." And they're probably like, Mary, I think you might be exaggerating just a little bit. I mean, maybe the stone is rolled away. Maybe they moved his body, but alive? That's not possible. That's not possible. But you and I know, those of us who have had our own experiences with Jesus, you and I are very aware of the fact that anything is possible with our God. Amen. Anything is possible. The impossible suddenly is very real, and it happens. And it should change our lives. So some people might say the whole Bible is a big fish story. A burning bush and a tablet and some walls crumbling and Daniel in the lion's den, like the song I sang last week, and the story of Mary. And what is this the most crazy story of all? This man that chooses to be tortured, chooses death in a horrific way on a cross for you and for me. Best fish story ever told. Best one. And there are people that don't believe it. So they need to see the fish story in action. People need to see us living our fish stories. It should be apparent by who we are, the things that we say, and what we do, that we've had an encounter with Jesus. And it was massive and heroic and life-changing and all of the things. And it should be obvious. So, cheers to that, right? I want to challenge everybody this week. I want to put a challenge out to you. And let me just put it up here on the screen. I would like each and every one of you to write your own fish story. Okay. A lot of you have had incredible, beautiful encounters with Jesus, but maybe you've never taken time to journal it. Maybe you've never taken time to write it out. Write your own story. And then the second part of the challenge is share it with someone. Write out your story and share it with another person. Fish stories are not meant to be kept a secret. They are meant to be shared with others, for you to be able to experience it with someone else, help someone experience it, bring it in. Does that make sense? So think about that today. If you haven't done that, some of us do that every day because you've made it your job to tell people your fish story. But for others, maybe you have kept it to yourself and you haven't shared with anybody. So I want to encourage you to do that. I know when I first, and I'm talking about the first memory that you have, the first memory that you have of encountering Jesus. You may not remember your baptism. Some people don't even remember if they received communion, what their first memory of their first Holy Communion was. But think about the first memory that you have of encountering Jesus and how did you feel? Make sure you tell that in the story. Did it change you in any way? And if so, in what way? And then did you tell anybody about it? And maybe that's not the story that you want to tell others because you have another story of an encounter with Jesus. But I want you to first think of your first encounter, and then just write them down. Maybe you have lots of them. So today, as we think about the things that we have to pray for, the things that we are concerned with, or the things going on in our life. I know some of the people on here that we have prayers for your family members who are sick or going through some hard times. Carrie, we're praying for your Aunt Mary, Dottie, we are praying with you as well. Everybody on here, all of the things that weigh heavy on our hearts, like that heavy net that they encountered, those disciples, may we be ready to set that down. Let God deal with the heavy nets and let us follow him. So I decided to do this song for Libby and a few other people. I think Millie also talked about it. Will you come and follow me if I but call your name? Will you go where you don't know and never be the same? Will you let my love be shown? Will you let my name be known? Will you let my life be grown in you and you in me? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, the greatest fisherman of all, thank you for calling each and every one of us closer to you. Thank you for giving us an encounter that is meant to change our lives and to help us to walk daily in the path that you have chosen for us. Help us to boldly go out and share that story with others. Lord, we know that you promised to take care of our loved ones as we follow you. And so for all of those loved ones that we have that are suffering, that are hurting, that are need healing, that are in need of healing, Lord, that you will come and be the great healer, that you will strengthen us for the journey to follow you, and that we will know our calling, and that we will listen. Will you love the you hide if I would call your name? Will you quell the fear inside and never be the same? Will you use the faith you found to reshape the world around? Through my sight and touch and sound in you and you in me. So will you go wherever he calls you to go? Will you share your fish story with others so that they will desire their own encounter if they haven't had one yet? That is our challenge today. So I'd be very interested when you come back next week, or go and share your fish story on faithinreallife.com. We would love to hear it. Write it out, share it with us, give us a snippet in the comments, or make it a PDF and let us go to it. Share that at faithinreallife.com, your fish story, your encounter, how God has moved in you and in your life and changed it, because you are never the same after you encounter Jesus. So go out and share your stories, your encounters with Jesus, bigger and bigger and better every single time, because that is a life in him. So thank you so much for everybody for tuning in. Thank you for being here, supporting this ministry. It's such a valuable resource. If you would like more inspiration, definitely show up tomorrow. Millie always has great depth and has much to share with us, much wisdom. And thank you, Tina. Oh, Libby, you're welcome. Hey, Daddy, yeah, that was a favorite of a lot of us. So I'm glad that I took some time in. And how perfect. Come and follow me. So that is our directive. So we'll see you soon next week. Tea Talk Tuesday, maybe on location somewhere. So you want to stay tuned for that. And many, many blessings for a beautiful week. God bless everyone.